But almost all auto mishaps are accidents. While there are seemingly a lot of those, the actual fraction of mishaps, when held up against the stupendous number of possibilities for mishap, is quite small. I know it's difficult to accept this because the specter of global terrorism is a favorite cover story of governments. But the truth is substantially different from the tale the public is sold. According to the U.S. State Department, 1995 was a near-record year for terrorist murders. It saw 300 worldwide, 200 at the hands of the Tamil Tigers in Sri Lanka, compared to the 400,000 smoking-related deaths in the United States alone. When we consider our assumptions about human nature that keep children in a condition of confinement and limited options, we need to reflect on driving and things like almost non-existent global terrorism. Notice how quickly people learn to drive well. Early failure is efficiently corrected, usually self-corrected, because the terrific motivation of staying alive and in one piece steers driving improvement. If the grand theories of Comenius and Herbart about learning by incremental revelation, or those lifelong nanny rules of Owen, McClure, Pestalozzi, and Beatrice Webb, or those calls for precision in human ranking of Thorndike and Hall, or those nuanced interventions of Yale, Stanford, and Columbia's Teachers College were actually as essential as their proponents claimed, this libertarian miracle of motoring would be unfathomable. Now consider the intellectual component of driving. It isn't all just hand-eye-foot coordination. First-time drivers make dozens, no hundreds, of continuous hypotheses, plans, computations, and fine-tuned judgments every day they drive. They do this skillfully, without being graded, because if they don't, organic provision exists in the motoring universe to punish them. There isn't any sort of court of appeal from your own stupidity on the road. I could go on. Think of licensing, maintenance, storage, adapting machine and driver to seasons and daily conditions. Carefully analyzed, driving is as impressive a miracle as walking, talking, or reading, but this only shows the inherent weakness of analysis, since we know almost everyone learns to drive well in a few hours. The way we used to be as Americans, learning everything, breaking down social class barriers, is the way we might be again without forced schooling. Driving proves that to me. 2 approaches to discipline. Rules of the Stokes County School, November 10, 1848. William A. Chaffin, Master. Offense: boys and girls playing together, 4 lashes. Quarreling, 4 lashes. Fighting, 5 lashes. Gambling or betting at school, 4 lashes. Playing cards at school, 10 lashes. Telling lies, 7 lashes. Telling tales out of school, 8 lashes. Nicknaming each other, 4 lashes. Giving each other ill names, 3 lashes. Swearing at school, 8 lashes. Blackguarding each other, 6 lashes. For misbehaving to girls, 10 lashes. For leaving school without leave of the teacher, 4 lashes. Going home with each other without leave of teacher, 4 lashes. For drinking spirituous liquors at school, 8 lashes. Making swings and swinging on them, 7 lashes. For misbehaving when a stranger is in the house, 6 lashes. For wearing long fingernails, 2 lashes. For not making a bow when a stranger comes in, 3 lashes. Coming to school with dirty face and hands, 2 lashes. For calling each other liars, 4 lashes. For playing bandy, 10 lashes, etc. Whatever you might think of this, in light of Dr. Spock or Piaget or the Yale Child Study folks, it must be apparent that civility was honored, and in all likelihood, no one ever played bandy a second time. I've yet to meet a parent in public school who ever stopped to calculate the heavy, sometimes lifelong price their children pay for the privilege of being rude and ill-mannered at school. I haven't met a public school parent yet who was properly suspicious of the state's endless forgiveness of bad behavior, for which the future will be merciless. About the same time Master Chaffin was beating the same kind of sense into young Tar Heels that convict Hobby had beaten into Little Washington, Robert Owen, a Scottish industrialist usually given credit for launching utopian socialism, was constructing his 2-volume Life. This autobiography contains 10 rules of schooling, the first 2 of which show a liberalization occurring in 19th century educational thought. First rule, no scolding or punishment of the children. Second rule, unceasing kindness in tone, look, word, and action to all children without exception, by every teacher employed so as to create a real affection and full confidence between teachers and the taught. The Owenite colony had what we now call a theory of holistic schooling as its foundation. Owen was a genuine Messiah figure, and his colony operated in a part of Indiana which was removed from prying eyes. New Harmony, as it was called, was the center of the transatlantic upper-class world's fascinated attention in its short existence. Yet it fell apart in 3 years, slightly less time than it took for John Dewey's own lab school to be wrecked by Owenite principles, unmistakably enough to suggest Dewey would be better if he got out of Chicago. And so he did, transferring to Teachers College in Manhattan, where in time his Lincoln School carried on the psychological traditions of New Harmony before it too ultimately failed. Wherever it occurred, schooling through the 18th and 19th centuries, up until the last third of the 19th, heavily invested its hours with language, philosophy, art, and the life of classical civilizations of Greece and Rome. In the grammar schools of the day, little pure grammar as we understand it existed. They were places of classical learning. Early America rested easily on a foundation of classical understanding, one subversive to the normal standards of British class society. The lessons of antiquity were so vital to the construction of every American's institution, it's hardly possible to grasp how deep the gulf between then and now is without knowing a little about those lessons. Prepare yourself for a surprise. For a long time, for instance, classical Athens distributed its most responsible public positions by lottery. Army generalships, water supply, everything. The implications are awesome. Trust in everyone's competence was assumed. It was their version of universal driving. Professionals existed but did not make key decisions. They were only technicians, never well regarded because prevailing opinion held that technicians had enslaved their own minds. Anyone worthy of citizenship was expected to be able to think clearly and to welcome great responsibility. As you reflect on this, remember our own unvoiced assumption that anyone can guide a ton of metal traveling at high speed with 3 sticks of dynamite sloshing around in its tanks. When we are asked what kind of schooling was behind this brilliant society which has enchanted the centuries ever since, any honest reply can be carried in one word: none. After writing a book searching for the hidden genius of Greece in its schools, Kenneth Freeman concluded his unique study, The Schools of Hellas, in 1907 with a summary: there were no schools in Hellas. No place boys and girls spent their youth attending continuous instruction under command of strangers. Indeed, nobody did homework in the modern sense. None could be located on standardized tests. The tests that mattered came in living, striving to meet ideals that local tradition imposed. The word schola itself means leisure in a formal garden to think and reflect. Plato in the Laws is the first to refer to school as a learned discussion. The most famous school in Athens was Plato's Academy, but its physical manifestation had no classes or bells. It was a well-mannered hangout for thinkers and seekers, a generator of good conversation and good friendship, things Plato thought lay at the core of education. Today we might call such a phenomenon a salon. Aristotle's Lyceum was pretty much the same, although Aristotle delivered 2 lectures a day. A tough one in the morning for intense thinkers, a kinder, gentler version of the same in the afternoon for less ambitious minds. Attendance was optional, and the famous gymnasium, so memorable as a forge for German leadership later on, was in reality only an open training ground where men 16 to 50 were free to participate in high-quality, state-subsidized instruction in boxing, wrestling, and javelin. The idea of schooling free men in anything would have revolted Athenians. Forced training was for slaves. Among free men, learning was self-discipline, not the gift of experts. From such notions, Americans derived their own academies, the French their lycées, and the Germans their gymnasium. Think of it. In Athens, instruction was unorganized, even though the city-state was surrounded by enemies, and its own society engaged in the difficult social experiment of sustaining a participatory democracy, extending privileges without precedent to citizens, and maintaining literary, artistic, and legislative standards which remain to this day benchmarks of human genius.